Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming. This is a long story. It's a whole book indeed. And we're going to tell it over the next hour. So more people can come and arrive if they so choose, or if you have something to do, we'll make sure to entertain you before you leave. Has anybody heard of the story of the last unicorn?
Yeah.
You have? Wonderful. Indeed, last unicorn. If they were all gone, how would we know about them? I'm not sure, except through storytelling and the oral tradition. Here it is, the last unicorn. And there's me, and there's all of you. This is the story of a unicorn who left her forest of eternal spring to face the great red bull and undo all of King Haggard's evil deeds. Let me borrow this for a second, sir. Once upon a time, there was a unicorn. She was very old, though she did not know how old she was. She no longer looked the color of sea foam that a brand new unicorn looked like. She looked more like snow, like a freshly fallen snow, illuminated by the moonlight. Darn digital things don't turn pages.
What a beautiful coat this unicorn has. It's so shimmery.
It looks like snow.
Unicorns, of course, like to live alone. The last time that this unicorn had seen another unicorn, the little virgin maidens that visited her in the forest, they spoke a completely different language. That's how long ago it had been. However, unicorns don't know much about time. They can't tell the difference between days and months, years, even centuries. Unicorns, you see, are immortal. And it is their nature to live in one single place. Usually a place like a forest that has a nice pond with good reflection quality, for a unicorn loves to stare at herself or himself, because unicorns know that they are the most beautiful creatures in all of the world. And they're magic besides. So on this spring day in her forest, because it is always spring, because the unicorn lives there, and it is always spring where a unicorn lives, there were two men who rode through the forest. And the unicorn doesn't like to be seen, but she likes to watch, and she likes to listen to people talking when they're in her wood. So she listened as these two hunters rode through her forest. The first one said, "I mistrust the smell of this forest. Creatures that live in a unicorn's wood, they get a little bit of their magic. I tell you, you'll never go home with so much as a mouse in your saddle in a unicorn's wood." And the second one said, "Unicorns are gone. This forest is a forest like any other. If indeed there ever even were unicorns." Well,
He doesn't believe.
the second man said, "I tell you, there's one unicorn in the world. Good luck to the old thing. And we won't catch a single thing so long as she's in this forest. Now there's light enough to hunt. Let's hurry." and off they went. But the unicorn stood still. "I'm the only unicorn there is," she said. Those were the first words that she had spoken, even to herself out loud, in over 100 years. "But I would know if all the other unicorns were gone, wouldn't I? Nothing can happen to the other unicorns that doesn't also happen to me, can it?" Her own voice frightened her and made her want to run. And she did. She started running as fast as she could through the forest, and the branches were snagging at her more than they ever did because she wasn't happy. Through clearings that were unbearably brilliant, through soft shadows, through the most beautiful place in all the world, the place where the unicorn lived. She shouted, she said, "I could never leave this place. I never could. Not if I really were the only unicorn in the world. I live here. I know how things smell and taste. I know how they are. What could I ever search for in this world except for this? Again, except for more beautiful forests just like this one." Well, you guys, unicorns aren't made to make choices. She pondered. She wandered around her forest. She said, "Should I go find the other unicorns? No, I should just stay here. I should just stay here in my forest where I'm happy and I'm safe and I don't even like other people anyway. I'm happy by myself. I don't need anything, but what if I'm the only one? What if I'm the last one?" For the first time in her life, she began to feel time crawl by like worms on her skin. It was itching her. Centuries had gone by without her noticing, and now every second tick-tocked. She was restless. She could get no peace. "But I will not go. Because men have seen no unicorns does not mean they have all vanished. Even if it were true, I would not go. I live here." But in the middle of one warm night, she woke up and she knew, yes, now is the time. And she hurried through her forest. She tried to look at nothing. She tried to smell nothing, as if she would not even be gone. "I must go quickly. I must come back as soon as I can. Maybe I won't have to go far. Whether I find the others or not, I'll come back very soon as I can. I'll only be gone a short time." And she went to the edge of her forest, and the road out of the forest gleamed like water. And when she stepped onto it, away from the trees, she felt how hard it was, how long the road was. She almost turned back then, turned around. But as she looked back towards her forest, she took a deep breath of that forest air, and she held it in her mouth like a flower, as long as she could. And then she turned down that road, and she went in search of where the other unicorns had gone. And before I start the story of the last unicorn, I just want to remind everybody that this is a beautiful new space, the portal. And this is kind of an opening weekend for the event space. And we're doing some recording. Your faces shouldn't be in the recording, and let's get the back of your head in my presentation. However, the reason we're doing that is to put together a crowdfunding video in order to try and raise money and make this beautiful first effort something that's permanently established for the community and everybody can continue to come enjoy. There's going to be dance. As you can see, we have this dance floor. There's going to be dance, storytelling. Also, if you yourself like to host events, then I'm sure the space is open to collaborating with you. And so I just wanted to make that announcement. I think that you can leave your email perhaps at the front if you'd like any announcements, and stay tuned for the launch of the crowdfunding campaign in September. And we'll have flyers and everything in the chocolate shop, keeping everybody up to date on that. Would you guys like to know what happens to the unicorn?
Yes!
Yeah? Okay, wonderful. One afternoon, as the unicorn was lazily walking down the road, along came a butterfly and landed upon the tip of her horn. Butterfly, what are you doing out? It's so windy. Well, the butterfly didn't care. It doesn't live very long. It's just having fun, singing songs and reciting poetry about any nonsense it happens to hear upon the wind. Butterfly, do you know what I am? For the unicorn was beginning to get nervous that nobody knew what a unicorn was, and indeed, how could they recognize where the unicorns had gone if they couldn't even recognize a unicorn from a simple mare? And the butterfly said, yes, excellent, I know who you are. You're a fishmonger. You're my everything. You're my sunshine. You're old and gray and full of sleep. You're my pickle face, my consumptive Mary Jane. Your name is a bell hung in my golden heart, and I would break my body to pieces to call you once by your name. The unicorn was delighted. Say my name then. If you know my name, then say my name. And the butterfly responded, Rumpelstiltskin. Gotcha. All butterflies know are songs and poetry, and anything they hear. They mean well, but they can't keep things straight. And why should they, after all? They're gonna die soon. The unicorn was frustrated. Fly away, butterfly. It's too cold for you to be out. The butterfly said, Unicorn! Unicorn, French, Old French, Latin, unicornus, literally one-horned, unus, one, cornus, a horn, a fabulous animal resembling a horse with a horn. Oh, I'm a cook and a captain, bold and the mate and a Nancy brig. Has anyone seen my Kelly? The unicorn was confused, but you do know me. She was excited. She heard her name, Butterfly. I want to know all that there is. Where are the others like me? I'll believe what you tell me, and then I can just go home to my forest if you just tell me where they are. And gosh, I've already been away so long. It's only been a couple days, but it feels like forever. And I said that I'd be back so soon. The butterfly responded, Over the mountains, down the valley of the shadow, ride, boldly ride. No, listen, no, don't listen to me. Listen. His horns were of a wild ox. With them he shall push the people, all of them, to the ends of the earth. Listen, quickly. I have nightmares about crawling around on the ground. The unicorn walked on slowly. Something seemed true. There was some magic in his tail, but she couldn't figure out what, and no one has time for butterflies. All the same, if she had not been dreaming of home as she fell asleep, she would have heard the soft turn of the wheels and the jingle of 9 carts as they approached the nice meadow where she went to sleep in. The lead wagon was driven by an old squat woman, and it bore signs on its shrouded sides that said, in big letters, Mommy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival, and in smaller letters underneath that, Carnival, creatures of the night brought to light. Mama Fortuna saw the unicorn and recognized it for what it was. But she asked her driver, What do you see? And the driver said, A dead horse. She asked her magician, she said, What do you see? And he thought for quite a while, and he looked at her and he said, I think the horse is alive. And she said, I want that horse for my carnival. Capture it. And they said, I'll need a rope. And she said, no. The only rope that could hold a unicorn would be the cord with which the old gods bound the Fenris wolf, the one that was made of fish's breath, bird's spittle, a woman's beard, the meowing of a cat, the sinews of a bear, and one more thing, I remember, the roots of a mountain. Having none of these elements and no dwarves to weave them together, we'll have to do the best we can with iron bars. I'll put a sleep on her." And she cast a spell upon the unicorn to not wake up until the morning. And she instructed her workers, "Take the ninth cage to pieces and build it around her. But beware, the hand that so much as brushes her mane turns instantly to a donkey's hoof that it deserves to be." And so they did. They didn't touch the unicorn at all, and they built the great cage of the circus around her. And when she woke up, she was trapped. And every time she brushed against the iron bars, it burned her. And the whole cage shrunk around her, and she had less and less space. And she was just pacing around in her cage, trapped, when the magician came up.
Why?
He said, "Unicorn, tell me what you see." And out beyond the unicorn's cage, she noticed that Ruka, the carnival barker, had a crowd of people at the cages of the animals. And he was telling them about these creatures in the cages. "Gatekeeper of the underworld, 3 heads and a healthy coat of vipers, as you can see. Last above ground in the time of Hercules, who dragged him up under one arm. But we lured him to light again with promises of a better life. And here, Cerberus, this the midnight serpent. And this way," and the unicorn said to the magician, "It's only a dog. It's a hungry, unhappy dog with only one head and hardly any coat at all, the poor thing. How could they take it for Cerberus? Are they all blind? And the satyr is an ape, an old ape with a twisted foot. The dragon is a crocodile, much more likely to breathe fish than fire. And the great Manticore is a lion, a perfectly good lion, but no more monstrous than the others. This is strange sorcery. There's no meaning. There's more meaning to magic than this." "Well said indeed. I knew the old whore wouldn't dazzle you with her 2-penny spells," said the magician. "She's made her 3rd mistake now, and that's too many for the tired old trickster like herself." The unicorn halted in her slow, desperate pacing around the cage, realizing for the first time the magician understood her speech. It made her so happy to be recognized. He smiled, seeing that she recognized him, and his face was frightfully young for a young man, untraveled by time, unvisited by grief or wisdom. "Who are you?" said the unicorn. "It is I, Schmendrick the magician." "You won't have heard of me, don't worry. No clapping necessary, I'm quite not famous." The unicorn came very near to explaining that it was hardly for her to have heard of one wizard or another, but something sad and valiant in the magician's voice kept her from bringing that up. "I entertain the sightseers as they gather for the show. Miniature magic, sleight of hands, flowers to flags, flags to fishes, that sort of thing. All accompanied by persuasive patter, implying that I can do much more than I can actually show today. But I have quite wonderful powers. Really, you'll have to come back another time to see them. Anyway, it's not much of a job. I've had worse, but I'll have better one day." The unicorn glanced to her right at the cage that was closest to hers, and all of a sudden her body turned cold. There sat on an oaken perch a creature with the body of a great bronze bird and a hag's face clenched deadly as the talons which gripped the wood. She had the shaggy round ears of a bear. Down her scaly shoulder there fell hair the color of moonlight. To look at her was to feel as if a cloud had covered up the moon and made the sky dark again at night. "This one is real," the unicorn said. "This is the Harpy Seleno." "The old woman caught her by chance," the magician whispered, "while she was asleep, just as she took you. It was ill fortune for them both, and they knew it. Mama Fortuna's craft is barely enough to keep her in those bars. The mere presence of that harpy is wearing down all of her spells so thin, she won't have enough power to fry an egg soon. She never should have messed with a real harpy or a real unicorn. The truth melts her magic away, but she cannot keep it from trying to make it serve her. But this time, I fear she's gone too far." Ruka had just brought the crowd, to the Harpy's cage. "Her name means the Dark One, the one whose wings blacken the sky before a storm. She put up a fiercer fight than all of the rest put together. It was like trying to bind a hailstorm with hair. But Mama Fortuna's powers are great enough, even for that." Smindrick, aside to the unicorn, said, "You'll need to be free when she frees herself. She mustn't catch you caged. For the Harpies have no special love for unicorns." "But I dare not touch the iron. My horn could open the lock, but I cannot reach it. I cannot get out." The unicorn was trembling with horror of the harpy, but her voice was quiet and calm. They were interrupted again by the approach of Ruka and his followers, grown quite quieter after visiting the harpy than the gang that they had originally been giggling at the Manticore. The magician fled, but he called back softly, "Don't be afraid. Smindrick is with you. Do nothing until you hear from me." Alone that night, in the moonlight, the old woman glided from cage to cage, rattling the locks, prodding her enchantments as a housewife squeezes melons at the market, taking care of her prizes. And when she came to the harpy's cage, the monster made a sound as shrill as a spear and spread the horrid glory of its wings. Something much worse than that. I wouldn't do it for you. For a moment, it seemed to the unicorn that the bars of the cage began to wiggle and run like rain. But Mama Fortuna cracked her twiggy fingers, and the bars were iron again. "Not yet. Not yet," said Mama Fortuna, and the harpy sank down onto her perch, waiting. Then Mommy Fortuna, she turned to the unicorn's cage. "Whatever your friend may say, I must have some small art after all to trick a unicorn into believing herself old and foul, captured in this cage. That takes a certain skill, I'd say." "Do not boast, old woman. Your death sits in that cage and hears you," the unicorn indicated the harpy. "But at least I know where it is. You were out on the road hunting for your own death, and I know where that one is too. But I spared you the finding of it, and you should be grateful for that, unicorn." "The Red Bull? Do you know of the Red Bull? Where do I find the Red Bull?" "The Red Bull of King Haggard? So you know of the Red Bull. Well, he'll not have you because you belong to me." "You know better, old witch. Free the harpy while there's time and set me free as well. Keep your poor shadows if you will. but let us go. I'd quit show business first. You'd do much better to stay with me and be false, for in this world only the Red Bull will know you when he sees you. She left the unicorn with that thought, almost tempted to not be recognized with the fear of the Red Bull, but the fear of the Harpy was perhaps even greater, trapped in this cage next to such a powerful creature. Luckily, Smindrick came back at dawn, slipping between the cages as quietly as water. I couldn't get away any sooner. She set Ruka to watching after me, but I asked him a riddle, and he can only think of one thing at a time. It should keep him occupied all night. I think you are my friend. Will you help me? Said the unicorn. If not you, said the magician, then no one. You are my last chance. But then we hear Ruka in the distance. Schmindrick! Hey, Schmindrick! I got it! It's a coffee pot, right? You deserve the service of a great wizard, but I have no time to try my terrible magic tricks. I'll have to be satisfied with a second-rate lockpick. And so Schmindrick got out of his pocket and started working furiously on the lock while Ruka called, Schmindrick, where did you go? I've got the answer to that darn riddle you gave me. And at last Schmindrick freed the lock. Aha! And the front door dropped down, and the unicorn walked out of her cage free. And she began to walk to the other animal cages, and one by one she touched her horn to those locks, and she opened the cages and set them free. And the animals, terrified, ran towards the forest and waited for nothing without a second goodbye. And then the unicorn walked towards the Harpy's cage. The Harpy gave the unicorn such a look that said, I will kill you if you set me free. Set me free. And the unicorn bent her horn down to the lock on the Harpy's cage. And the lock unlatched, and she stepped backwards. And instead of the door falling forwards, all six walls came down, and the roof exploded off, and the Harpy opened her wings and started beating a magical dark storm into the place and rose into the air. And she swooped down, and the tip of her feather barely caught the edge of the unicorn's shoulder, drawing blood from the magical immortal beast. But the Harpy was not going for the unicorn. The Harpy swooped past the unicorn at Mommy Fortuna's outstretched hands. And in that collision, there was no Mommy Fortuna anymore. The Harpy crouched down, her wings around what was left of the old witch. And Smindrick the magician said, Run! Run before the Harpy hears of you! And the unicorn turned to Smindrick and said, No, come with me. And they walked away. You must never run from anything immortal. It attracts their attention. Walk slowly and pretend to be thinking of something else. Sing a song or say a poem, but walk slowly and they will not follow you. Walk very slowly, magician. And so the magician and the unicorn, they walked on and they rested. And when the sun rose, the magician turned to the unicorn and said, What will you do now? And the unicorn says, I owe you a favor, magician. You have helped me. What would you like for me to do in return before I leave on my journey? And Schmindrick said, Please, take me with you. And the unicorn said, I wish you had asked me for anything else. And the magician said, Well, I don't think you could actually grant me what I truly desire. And the unicorn says, No, I cannot make you something you're not. I could not turn you into a real magician. I can give you no magic that you do not have yourself. But I will accept you. You can come along with me and help me find King Haggard and his red bull, and help me to discover where the rest of the unicorns are in this world. For I have heard too many tales. Each argues with the other. The bull is real, the bull is a ghost. The bull is Haggard himself when the sun goes down, or the bull was in the land before Haggard, or it came with him, or it came to him, or it protects him from the raids and the revolutions and saves him the expense of arming men. It keeps him prisoner in his own castle. It's the devil, to whom Haggard has sold his soul. It's the thing he sold his soul in order to get. Or the bull belongs to Haggard, or Haggard belongs to the bull. None of us really know. So they passed down the roads, and the red bull ran close after the unicorns and covered up their footprints. That's the story that I heard. Well, no one's ever traveled with me, but then no one ever caged me before. No one took me for a white mare or disguised me as myself, and many things seem determined to happen to me for the first time, and your company will surely not be the strangest of them, even if you don't seem to be useful in the least. So you may come with me if you like, though I do wish you would ask me for some other reward. It's all right, said the magician. Don't worry about it. And the unicorn said, I'm not worrying about it. So on they went, and they came to a town. And although the unicorn doesn't need to eat, the magician was getting quite hungry, and he said, Unicorn, would you mind if I went into this town and did some tricks for some food and maybe got a little drunk? And she said, do as you will, human. And so he came into town, and everyone was so excited to have a traveling performer attend to them. And the mayor came out and said, let me personally invite you to my house and join me in having a feast. And so they did, and Smindrick was enjoying all the free wine and all the free food, and then it was time for him to perform, and he went out into the square, and he started doing the tricks and turning frogs into ferrets and ferrets back into fairies, but that didn't work, and everybody didn't really care too much as long as someone was there entertaining them. And then along came a group of men on horses riding into town. Jack Jingly and his merry men came, and all the townspeople held up their wallets and said, don't punch me in the face. And they came and they collected all the money, and they said, who's this guy? And they took Schmindrick's hat right off of his head, and they rode around and they passed it to each other and they played with it. And Schmindrick, he was not too happy about this. You see, you don't touch a wizard's hat. And he said, excuse me, sir. You do not want to get on the wrong side of a wizard. I am very powerful. I have a lot of magic tricks that you don't want to see me use, and please return my hat promptly. And they laughed at him. They said, a magician. I bet. Why don't you just go ahead and do one of your magic tricks then and get this hat back from us? And so Smindrick, not one to turn down a challenge, he held up his finger and he started waving it, and he mumbled some words, and the hat flew out of the hand of the person holding it and came around and then promptly slapped the mayor in the face, slapped his wife and slapped his children too, and then returned right back to the guy who had taken it from him. Quite to Smindrick's embarrassment, the mayor was very upset, and Jack Jingly and his men were cracking up in laughter in their horses. They said, we're taking you with us. And the mayor said, please do. And so they scooped up the magician on their saddle and they rode off into the forest. That's right. Off to Captain Coley's hideout. Jack Jingly came in to the secret hideout of Captain Coley, And they all celebrated, and they showed all the things that they had stolen, and they returned some meat to the kitchen where Molly would cook it up nice and good. And Captain Coley was so excited to have Schmendrick the magician there to entertain everybody, and particularly to listen to all the songs that he had written about himself. For Captain Coley was very proud of all the wonderful deeds that he thinks that he has done, many Robin Hood deeds. And he sat Schmendrick down, and he called one of his guys over. He said, Daisy, Daisy, come here, sing of all of our great deeds to our guest. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, go on, sing the one I had you sing yesterday, because every night he had them sing the exact same songs over and over again. And so Dick Fancy and Daisy did a wonderful duet about how they robbed from the rich and gave to the poor. And then after a few songs, Dick Fancy said to Captain Coley, Captain, if we're going to have all these folk songs written about us, and I suppose we must, then we feel like they ought to be true songs about real outlaws, not this lying life. No offense, Captain, but we're really not that merry when all's said and done. Oh, I'm merry 24 hours a day, and that's a fact, said Captain Coley. But we don't steal from the rich and give to the poor. In fact, we steal from the poor because they can't fight back, most of them.
Oh, no.
And the rich take from us because they could wipe us out in a day. And we don't rob the fat, greedy mayor on the highway. We pay him tribute every day. And we never carry off the proud bishops and keep them prisoner in the wood, feasting and entertaining them because, well, Molly's not that good of a cook, and we wouldn't be very good company for a bishop. And when we go to the fair and we wear disguises, we never win the archery competition or single stick. We do get nice compliments on our disguises, but that's about it. And so Captain Coley promptly put him over in the corner, in the dunce corner with the dunce hat, and asked the minstrel to keep on going. And Schmendrick, he just couldn't take any more of it. He said, please, Captain Coley, please let me perform. It's my turn to do a show. I'd love to entertain you. And so he did his magic. They acquiesced, and he started doing his tricks, and offering no true magic, he drew no true magic back from his audience. When his spell failed, they clapped just as politely and vacantly as though he had succeeded. They were a perfect audience. It startled the magician to see the disappointment in the cook, Molly Grew's restless eyes. Suddenly he got angry, and it made him laugh. And he dropped the 5 spinning balls that he had been juggling, which, when he got going, could become 7, and they caught on fire. But no, this woman laughing at his tricks, it was time to do something different. So he closed his eyes, and he said to the magic inside him, because he knew he could not control it, do as you will. It sighed through him, beginning somewhere secret, in his shoulder blade, perhaps, or in the marrow of his shin bone, or in the heart. And it filled and tautened like a sail. Something moved more surely in his body than he ever had. It spoke with his voice, commanding. Weak with power, he sank to his knees. He didn't even know what he said. I wonder what I did. I did something. He opened his eyes. Everybody was staring at him. Nothing seemed to have happened. But then Molly Grew called out in a soft, shaking voice, and all turned to see what she saw. She was looking out in the forest. A man came walking into the clearing. He was dressed in green, but for a brown jerkin. He had a slanting bow cap and had a rooster's feather in it. And he had a bow strung across his back that was as tall as Jack Jingly. And then he had arrows in his quiver that could have been a staff for Captain Coley. And behind him came others. one at a time, sometimes two together, sometimes laughing and conversing with each other, although they made no sound. Except they were all green except for one who was wearing all red from head to toe. And then there was another one in a Friars Brown Habit with a huge belly, drinking a glass of wine, and then one bigger than all the rest. And he was singing as he walked. And off they went into the forest. It was Sandy Dandy and Dick Fancy who moved first. All the figures but the last had passed into the darkness when he rushed after them, calling, "Robin! Robin, Mr. Hood, sir! Wait for me! Marion! Scarlet! Little John!" And one by one, everybody ran after Robin Hood, and the real magic cleared the entire forest of everybody except for Molly Grew and Schmindrick sitting there witnessing true magic that he had finally made, although he didn't know how or why or if he could ever do it again. And then, since everyone had left, the unicorn appeared, because she was quite done waiting anyway. And to Schmindrick's surprise, Molly immediately recognized her for what she was. But she wasn't a maid and awed like we might expect. In fact, she was upset. She was almost as if she was about to hit the unicorn. She said, "Where have you been?" "I'm here now," said the unicorn. "And what good is it to me that you're here now? Where were you 20 years ago, 10 years ago? How dare you come to me now when I am this? I wish you'd never come. I wish you just had never come, because it would be the last unicorn in the world that would come to Molly Grew. It's all right, though. I forgive you." And she pet the unicorn, and she felt better. And Schmindrick was getting quite jealous because the unicorn never let him touch her. And he said, "Unicorns are not to be forgiven." He was jealous, not just of the fact that they were touching each other, but of the secret that they seemed to share between them, the special connection that he didn't seem to have with the unicorn who cared nothing for him. He said, "Unicorns are for beginnings, for innocence and purity and newness. Unicorns are for young girls like these two." And Molly said, "You don't know much about unicorns, do you?" "Well, you can't come with us. We're on a quest. And I'm her guide." And Molly just said again, "You don't know much about unicorns, do you? She's the one letting you travel with her, though I can't think of why, but she's got no need of you. She doesn't need me either, heaven knows, but she'll take me. Ask her." "Never. I forbid it. I, Schmindrick the magician, I forbid it. I'm a rousing wizard's you're rousing a wizard's wrath, and if I'm going to turn you into a frog." And Molly said, "I should laugh myself sick. You don't even know where we're going." Said, "I do too. We're going to King Haggard, and we're going to fight the Red Bull." That actually gave Molly a bit of a pause. She stopped laughing. The Red Bull was no laughing joke, and King Haggard, he was the reason why everybody was so upset and poor and hungry all the time. He's caused nothing but ruin in this whole land. But she put on her brave face and she said, "Do you think it matters to me? And besides that, you're going the wrong way. King Haggard's castle is that way." And Schmindrick, with a sinking feeling in his stomach, he knew he didn't have to ask the unicorn if Molly could travel. He just knew that she'd say yes. And after all, she did seem to know which way they were going. And so the three of them turned right around, and they walked back the way they had come, through the camp. Still, everyone was out in the forest looking for Robin Hood and his merry men. And they went on, and in the distance they heard somebody coming out of a daze. He said, "It's easy to trick the eyes, but I swear I smelled them. You can't trick the nose, I smelled them, they were real." And the others said, "No, they weren't. We're just imagining it." And he said, "Well, you ran after them just like I did." He said, "Well, I'm still not quite sure." And off into the distance, those voices went. And the three of them journeyed together into the darkness, into a wind that tasted like nails, into the rind of a country that cracked, the flesh of it peeling back into gullies and ravines, shriveled into scabby hills. As they went through, toads would have been more hospitable than the sullen folk of Haggard's country. The villages were bald as bones, between knife-like hills where nothing grew, and they themselves had hearts unmistakably as sour as boiled beer. Their children stoned everyone on the way in, and their dogs chased them on the way out. Until one owlless evening, and they rounded a ridge, and Molly and Schmindrick and the unicorn, they saw the castle. "Haggard's dire keep," said Schmindrick. "A witch built it for him," they say, "but he wouldn't pay her for the work. She put a curse on the castle. She swore that one day it would sink into the sea with Haggard, when his greed caused the sea to overflow." And then she gave a shriek, the way that witches do, and they vanished into a sulphurous puff. And Haggard moved in right away. He said, "No tyrant's castle is complete without a curse." And he pointed down into the valley next to the castle, and he said, "That's Hag's Gate. It's the first town Haggard took when he came over the sea, the one that has lain the longest under his hand. It has a wicked name, though no one I ever met could say exactly why. No one goes into Hag's Gate. Nothing comes out of Hag's Gate. But the tales make the children behave. Monsters, werebeasts, witch covens, demons in broad daylight and the like. There's something evil in Hag's Gate, I think. Mommy Fortuna would never go there. She said that even Haggard was not safe while Hag's Gate stood. There is something wicked there." Nonetheless, the three adventurers went down into Hag's Gate, and to their surprise, house after house showed plenty that hadn't been visible in any of the rest of the country. The gardens were flowing with food, the houses were freshly painted, art was decorating the walls. To all semblances, it was the most beautiful town they had ever seen. But finally, something like they expected happened to them. Guards came out of the shadows with spears pointed at their hearts. They said, "Who goes there? What business do you have in Hag's Gate?" And they said, excuse us. We're humble travelers. I'm a magician. I just came to see if any of you guys wanted to, want me to do some tricks and stuff. Like, it's fun." And they let their spears down and they said, "Oh, my bad. Excuse us. Welcome to Hag's Gate. We'd love to have you. Come on down to the inn." And slowly they spread the word throughout the town. And people gathered. 10, 20, 100 people filled the inn common room. Nobody ever visited Hag's Gate. This was so exciting. They were all crowded around the table. They were feeding Schmindrick wine by the gallon, because that's what he likes. And then Drin, the man who originally accosted them, he sat down at the table with Schmindrick, and Molly, for the unicorn, had quickly disappeared, wandering the streets. No one recognized her for what she was. And Drin said, "Please, permit me to explain why we greeted you so uncivilly." And Schmindrick said, What I want to know is the reason for the rumors that have Hag's Gate full of ghouls and werewolves. It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard of. Oh, it's the same thing, said Dren. Listen, the town of Hag's Gate is under a curse. The room got quiet. Everyone was listening in. A blessing, you mean, said Schmendrick. In this bony kingdom of old haggards, you're like another land altogether. A spring, an oasis. I agree with you there's an enchantment here, but I drink to it. And Dren said, not that toast, my friend. Will you drink to a woe that is over 50 years old? It is that long since our sorrow began, when King Haggard built his castle by the sea. Well, the witch built it, I think. Credit where credit's due, said Schmendrick. Ah, so you know the story, said Dren. Then you must know that Haggard refused to pay the witch. That's right. I just told the other guys a minute ago. And she cursed him for his greed. Well, cursed the castle. But what had that to do with Hag's Gate? A town that had done no wrong. Well, the witch could not unmake the castle when she was unpaid. Or at least she would not, because she fancied herself an artist and she fancied the castle her greatest work. Anyway, she came to Hag's Gate and she demanded that they force Haggard to pay her what was due. Look at me and see yourselves, said the witch. That's the true test of a town or of a king. A lord who cheats an ugly old witch will cheat his folk by and by. Stop him while you still can, before you grow too used to him. Of course, Haggard paid her no money, and Hag's Gate, alas, paid her no heed. She was treated politely and referred to the proper authorities, whereupon she flew into a fury and screamed that in our eagerness to make no enemies at all, we had now made two. It was then that she cursed Haggard's castle and cursed the town as well. Thus his greed brought ruin upon us all. I'll tell you the words of the curse. You whom Haggard holds in thrall, share his feast and share his fall. You shall see your fortune flower till the torrent takes the tower. Yet none but one of Hag's Gate town may bring the castle swirling down. And from that moment, said Dren, we have known nothing but bounty. Our grim earth has grown so kind that the gardens and orchards, they spring up by themselves. We need neither plant nor tend them. Our flocks multiply. Our craftsmen become more clever as they sleep. The air we breathe and the water we drink, it keeps us from knowing illness. Our sorrow parts and goes around us like the water in the sea. And this has come while the rest of the realm has shriveled to cinders under Haggard's hand. For 50 years, none but he and we have prospered. It sucks. It's as though all the others have been cursed. And just then, Molly realized what was strange about the folk of Hag's Gate. Every one of them, they were not warmly dressed. Their faces peered out from their fine clothes, and they were the faces of poor people, cold as ghosts and too hungry to eat. Dren continued, how can we delight in our good fortune when we know that it must end? And that one of us is gonna end it. Every day makes us richer, and it also brings us closer to our doom. We're trembling in our boots. And Molly said, that's a good curse. That's a professional job. I always say, when you're having a job done, go to an expert. It pays in the long run. That witch knew how to curse. Smendrick said, Well, what is it that you wish of me? I mean, I could lift the curse if you want. I'm not that good of a sorcerer, but I'm happy to do it. And Drin said, No. I'm not taking you to be any more than you are. I think we'll leave the curse just the way it is and not chance anything with your magic. If it were listed, we might become poor again, but we'd no longer get richer. And that would suck too. No, the real job here is to keep Haggard's tower from falling. And since a hero that will destroy it is only going to come from Hag's Gate, it shouldn't be impossible. First of all, we're not going to let any strangers settle here. We're going to keep them away, by force if we must, hence the spears. But since you guys weren't staying here, just traveling musicians, we let you in. But that's where all those dark tales of Hag's Gate that you heard of, they come from. We invented them ourselves, and we spread them as widely as we could to make certain that no one would come. And Smindrick thought of something. He said, what about your children? What about the kids? Where are all the kids? What time do you guys put your kids to bed at night anyway? I haven't seen any children. How do you keep them from growing up and fulfilling the curse? And Dren said, we have no children.
No children.
We've had no children since the day the curse was laid upon us.
Oh, no.
It seemed like the obvious thing to do. You know, we wanted to foil the witch. But then, 21 years ago, a child was born. I found it myself, crossing in the marketplace one winter's night. It was laying on a butcher's block. It wasn't crying. And although there was snow, it was covered in cats. And it was really warm. And the cats were purring. It's in the book. I stood by the strange cradle for a long time, and I pondered. And the cats just purred, and it was so prophetic. And I just knew. And Molly said, you knew, right? You took the kid home, and you took care of it as if it was your own. And he said, no, I knew. I chased the cats away, and I went home. I didn't want the kid to grow up. It was like too good to be true. He was definitely the one who was going to bring down the castle and like ruin the whole town. So I just like left him there to die. But then the next day, he was gone. And we searched all the houses, and he was nowhere to be found. And we don't think the wolves ate him. And here's our thought. Sometimes King Haggard comes into town. We've seen him at night, and he walks through the town. And the very next day after we put that baby out to die in the cold, there came a crier into the town. And the crier said, King Haggard has had a son, rejoice. And he's an ugly guy. No one would want to have a son with King Haggard. And like after a week, they're like, no, he's his nephew. He's not his son. Because even they knew how ugly he was. And that no one ugly enough to like be with King Haggard, he wouldn't want them. And then if they weren't that ugly, then they wouldn't want him. Anyway, so that was never going to work out. So he was like, I got this kid. Anyway, so we're pretty sure that there's a prince up in the castle, Prince Lear, and he's the one. So what we want from you, Smindrick, are you listening? We want you to like become friends with him and then like slip him some poison or something, you know, just like, or like a dagger, or like just get rid of him, you know? And then we won't have to worry, and we can just be rich and happy forever and not have to worry about getting poor in this curse. So Smindrick said, what, you expect for like this wine and some food, I'm gonna go kill a prince at the most dangerous place in the whole country? He's like, no, we got money. So they haggled for a little bit, and they settled on like 70 gold now, 70 gold after the prince was done. And they're, you know, you're welcome to stay the night, but Smindrick was like, no, I'm getting out of here. And so he left, and Molly left with him, and then the unicorn joined up, and they started walking towards the castle, the money happily jingling in their pocket, because Smindrick never had any intention of killing the prince, but he did have every intention of getting rich. However, a low rumbling sound was heard. The Red Bull could smell the unicorn that close to the castle. And it came out from the forest. And the unicorn's horn started glowing brightly. And she knew that this was the moment she had to chase the Red Bull down and solve this mystery once and for all. And she stood on to the Red Bull, and the Red Bull towered above her bigger than houses, bigger than this whole property, infinitely red and infinitely expansive. Its horns pointed right at it, and it just slowly advanced. And the unicorn, she knew she was no great match for the bull. She shook in her boots, and her horn went dark, and she turned, and she started running. She ran away. She ran through the forest, and the bull chased after her. And they ran through the country, and Molly and Schmendrick, they followed and they watched. There was nothing they could do. Molly pleaded, Schmendrick, do something with your crappy magic. Just do something, anything. The bull's gonna kill the unicorn. Do something. And he said, there's nothing I can do. I'm a terrible magician. This is a unicorn. And the bull just chased the unicorn along, and finally Schmendrick knew. He said, I have to try. And he closed his eyes and he let the magic come over him, and he said to the magic, please, if ever you are gonna do it right, help do it now. And he let it go. And he saw the bull stop chasing the unicorn, and it stood there and it smelled the air. And it was confused. It looked around, and the sun was coming up. And the bull does not like the sunlight. And so, having lost its prey, it retreated. It went into the forest. It almost became its horns the towers of the castle. And as the first rays of the sunlight cast down upon the valley, Molly and Schmendrick saw, laying there, a young, naked human girl with a small spot on her forehead, perhaps where a horn would have been if she were a unicorn. And they went to her, and Molly took her cloak and wrapped it around the girl, who was looking down at herself, her human body, feeling her hands for the first time, and she said, what have you done? I would have rather a rhinoceros than a human. I'm so ugly with this human. Ugh. Schmendrick said, you're beautiful. As far as human goes, it's really good. If I turned you into a rhinoceros, they'd never let you in the castle, and we have to find the unicorn. So I turned you into a woman, and now we can go and we can solve the mystery. And she said, no, I'm dying. I'm not immortal anymore. And she was quite distraught. But what can you do? Molly said, change her back. The bull is gone. And Schmendrick said, I couldn't if I wanted to. I haven't found my magic yet. We're just going to have to wait for the right moment. And while they were arguing over in the castle, two lookouts noticed all that was happening, and they were talking to each other. I think I see a man and two women. No, it's a man and one woman, and I'm not sure what the other one is. Well, let's wait and see. And the party came up to the gates, and they said, ho there, who goes there? And Schmendrick stepped out and said, it is I, Schmendrick the magician. I've come to speak with King Haggard. Oh? And what do you want with King Haggard? That's between me and Mr. Haggard. It's very secret, important. He said, well, all right. And they came down and they let them through, and they brought them into the throne room, and the soldier, he took off his helmet and he said, I'm King Haggard, what do you want? And the other one took off his helmet, and it was his son, Prince Lear. And Schmendrick said, oh, King Haggard, I've come to enter your service as your magician. He said, I don't need that. Don't need a magician. I'm fine with everything I got. He said, oh, but where is your court? Don't you need a court? You need to have parties, and you need to invite people over, and you're a king, and you need all this stuff. And he said, no, I tried that. It didn't make me happy. So I got rid of it because it's expensive. It's not worth the money. I've got 3 soldiers. They're also the cooks, and they're also cleaning everything. And then I've got my son, and that's pretty much all I need, and they're too expensive as it is. So go ahead and get off with you. And he said, but really, you need a magician because what if you need magic? What if something happens? And Haggard said, well, I do have a magician. He's not around much because I don't need him much, but he's one of the best magicians ever. You've probably heard of him. He's really good, and he does everything I need in terms of like magic and stuff. And Schmendrick thought for a second. He said, well, Does he make you happy? The king said, no, it's been a long time since he made me happy. Spindrick said, well, maybe I can make you happy. And the king said, Malbrook? And Malbrook, he must have been standing there the whole time. He just stepped out of the shadows. Everybody was like, where'd this guy come from? And Malbrook goes, yes, you called. And he says, Malbrook, meet Spindrick. He's the new magician. He just took your job. And Malbrook said, are you serious? Do you know this guy? I know this guy. In the wizard community, he's got a reputation. He's not good. Let me tell you about Spindrick. His master used to be known as a failure because he couldn't even teach Spindrick to turn tea into a teacup. Like the most basic stuff. Like he's not a good magician. And the king was like, yeah, I know you're the best magician. And honestly, it's not working for me. I'm going to try out the crappy magician thing. You're like, maybe it's going to be funny. Maybe I'll laugh. Like he'll make mistakes. And so I'm cool with this. And so the king said, you are all officially in my service. And Molly, you can like become the cook. And little girl, you can do whatever you want because you are really trippy. And what are you doing? Are you just looking out the window? And she turned and she said, yeah, I'm just looking at the sea. He said, I like to look at the sea too. And he looked into her eyes and he said, I see leaves in your eyes and the forest and springtime, but I don't see myself. Who are you? Who is she? Spindrick said, this is my niece. This is the lady Amalthea. This is the lady Amalthea. Yeah. She's royal. She's here for Prince Lear. They're courting. That's why we're here too, so they can court. And so he said, okay. And Prince Lear, his jaw was on the floor. He had never seen anything so beautiful in his entire life. His breath was struck. He felt like he had been born again. And immediately he knew that he had to try and do whatever he could to win the heart of Lady Amalthea. And months passed with him doing exactly that. He would go out on adventures and he would slay ogres and dragons and bring back the wings of this and that and the talons of this and that. And Lady Amalthea would just kind of look disgusted and she wouldn't say a word to him. And he would feel bad about killing all these things, but it's all that he knew how to do. Be a hero, save princesses, and he came back and he bragged of all the things and he went nowhere. And one day he went down into the kitchen. He was complaining to Molly. I do all this stuff for her and she just doesn't even notice me. It sucks. And Molly said, maybe you should try like poetry or like not killing things, like songs and stuff like that. And he said, okay, I guess so. I had this appointment to go kill an ogre, so I'm gonna do that, but then maybe I'll try something new. And he left, and Lady Amalthea came in a little bit later, and she's like, I feel so bad about Prince Lear. He's just like killing all this stuff for me, and I don't know what to do. And Molly said, well, you know, I told him not to, and maybe you should at least like thank him or just say something. And she said, oh, I don't want to lead him on. It's just bad. It's really bad, and I'm breaking his heart all the time. And I just can't take it anymore. And she ran out of the room crying. And then the three old men came in, dressed in their armor, ready for supper. And they said, hi, Molly, we're here for supper. What's for supper tonight? We're so glad you're here cooking because we're terrible at cooking. We just cooked our socks. And now you cook food, and that's better. And she said, hey, guys, what's up? And they're like, oh, the Lady Amalthea. Oh, we just missed her. We love her so much. We'd get young if we could for her. She's the best. We're just so happy. And then Spindrick came in, and they were all talking about how time's just going by and not much is happening. It's just kind of getting comfortable with the day in and the day out. And then Spindrick said, man, I've been busting my butt over here trying to do all this magic tricks so Amalthea can go find the Red Bull and get the unicorns. Like, what is she doing? She hasn't been doing any of this. I need to go like get her in gear because I'm sick of just being King Haggard's little like monkey all the time. So he went off looking for Amalthea, who was, as usual, staring at the sea. And while she was staring at the sea, King Haggard came up to her, and King Haggard said, "Are you looking at all the unicorns? Because I know you're a unicorn. I got them all. I had the bull herd them all into the ocean right down there below you. Do you see them? They're there, and I haven't figured out how to turn you back into a unicorn yet, but you're going to be mine too."
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in the ocean?
he did. He said one by one, I got the Red Bull to herd all the unicorns into the ocean. And all he knows is what I want, and so you've tricked him because you don't look like a unicorn. And I just couldn't figure out what made me happy, and the first time I saw a unicorn, it made me so happy. I just wanted it. I just wanted to keep it. I wanted to have it. And I told the Red Bull, I need more unicorns. I need all the unicorns. And so he brought them to me one by one, all the unicorns. And I keep them in the ocean, and when the tide comes in, I like to watch them, and it's the only time of day that I'm actually happy. And soon, Lady Amalthea, I'll have you in the ocean, just like all the other unicorns.
No.
Do you see them? Do you see them, your brothers and sisters? Do you see them? And Lady Amalthea turned and looked at King Haggard, and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anything but the waves. And then she closed her eyes. At some point while her eyes were closed, the king left. She didn't notice. And she thought about all the unicorns. And she thought about how comfortable she was becoming as a human. And she didn't hardly remember her forest or any of the forest creatures anymore. And she didn't really think that she could do it. And she didn't really hear Schmendrick come up behind her, but he did, and he said to her, it's going to be okay, Lady Amalthea. So they're in the ocean, huh? I heard what he said. We'll go get them. I know the way. We'll go find the unicorns. So he grabbed her by the hand, and he took her to go and get Molly. And Molly had told Schmendrick earlier that a cat had told her that there was a talking skull who knew the way down to the bowl. And so they all went to the talking skull together. And the skull wasn't talking. And Schmendrick, he was trying all his magic tricks. And nothing was happening. And Molly looked on at the skull, and she knew that it was just not talking, that it really could talk, and it was just having fun playing with Schmendrick and not saying anything at all. And Schmendrick finally said, well, fine, if you won't talk, then I'll just poke you in the eye. And the skull said, don't poke me in the eye, so you can talk. And the skull said, of course I can talk. I've just been having fun. I'm bored. Nobody ever comes and hangs out with me. And Schmendrick said, okay, well, how do I get to the Red Bull? You have to tell us where the Red Bull is. And the skull said, well, maybe I'll tell you tomorrow. Will you come back tomorrow? Because the skull just wanted people to hang out with him as much as possible. He said, no, you have to tell us now. It's really important. We have to go. He said, well, King Haggard would be really mad if I told you where it was. And the Schmendrick said, well, I bet you're thirsty, aren't you? And that got the skull. He said, well, I haven't had a drink since I was alive. I sure am awfully thirsty. Do you have any wine? And Schmendrick said, well, I have water, but water into wine, that's the oldest trick in the book. I can do that. And he waved his hand over the water vessel and said some words, and poof, and he took a sip and he spit it out. He said, oh, this is the worst. Oh, my magic is so bad. This is the worst wine I've ever made. You don't want any of this. I'm just going to throw it out. And the skull said, no, don't throw it out. Don't throw it out. Oh, I'm so thirsty. Just a sip, even if it's the worst wine, just a sip of that wine would be so good. And Schmendrick was like, well, if you really want, you can have some of it, but you kind of have to tell us how to get to the bowl first. So I can't do that, but maybe you just give me a sip of the wine and then I'll tell you. And he said, no, you have to tell us first. I said, okay. You just go through the clock, and then you just get to the bowl. The bowl's on the other side of the clock. Now give me the wine. Schmendrick, go through the clock? Said Schmendrick, what do you mean go through the clock? There was a broken clock in the other room, but it hadn't worked in years. It just struck hours at random times. There wasn't any room inside. He said, what do you mean, Skull? Is it at the right time? Does like a secret staircase open? Or do you have to twist a knob? And Skull's like, I don't know anything about a secret. You just go into the clock. That's all you have to do, I promise. Give me the wine. And Smindrick poured the wine into his throat, which was actually water, but he didn't have a taste or a tongue or a gullet, and he couldn't tell the difference. And he said, this is the best wine I've ever had. Thank you so much. And he said, you know, Smindrick, since you've been so nice giving me that wine, I'm going to give you a tip. Smash me right now. Smash you? Why would I smash you? He said, just do it. Just smash me. He said, I'm not going to smash you. And then he had no choice. He was a guard. He said, King Haggard, they're coming. It's the unicorn. They're going for the clock. They know. I told them the truth. They all know. They're going for the clock. King Haggard, come. And then it was a mess, and everyone was running, and Molly and Schmindrick and Lady Amalthea and Lear, they all ran into the clock, and they started bumping into the things that swing around, and they were getting their head beat. And outside, Schmindrick was holding them off, and the men-at-arms came, and they were chasing each other around because they were friends. They didn't really want to hurt each other, but they had to pretend. And then finally, at last, Schmindrick came through the clock, and there was a big crashing sound, for Haggard had destroyed the clock. And they were stuck there in the darkness, and they all looked around, and they knew that there was no way out. And the only way was forward, down towards the Red Bull. So they started walking in single file line. Schmindrick led the way, Lady Amalthea right behind him, King Lear right behind her, and Molly in the back, one by one, until when the stench of the bull was starting to fill their nostrils, Lady Amalthea stopped. She could go no further. She said, I can't do it. Don't change me back into a unicorn. If I'm not a unicorn, we can just sneak by him and we can leave, and we don't have to fight him, and we don't need to save anybody, and we can just go back to my forest, and it'll all be okay. And Schmindrick said, I don't know. I think we came here to do this, and this is important, and you should do it. And she said, no, I can't do it. It's all okay. And Schmindrick said, well, I suppose if you want to give up on the quest and go home and not be a hero anymore and do it all wrong, then we can do that, and I don't have to change you back. Then Lear stepped up, and he heard the word hero, and he knew that he was a hero. It triggered something in him, and he said, no, we have to finish the quest. We have to go forward. We have to do this. I'll be there by your side. You can do this. You can beat the bull. And so Schmindrick said, all right, I'll turn you into a unicorn. And the bull came. And it ran, and they all were stuck against the wall. And Schmindrick turned Lady Amalthea back into a unicorn quite by accident when he was struck by the bull. And there she was, and the bull caught a scent and started chasing her again, chasing her through the tunnel, and they all ran after. And out of the tunnel they came onto the ocean, and there was the rolling ocean, and the unicorn had nowhere to go, and it turned to the right, and the bull chased it, and it turned around and it ran to the left, and the bull chased it, and it had nowhere to go, and its horn was dark. And Molly was once again pleading with Schmindrick, Schmindrick, do something. You have to help. You have to help the unicorn. She can't do it on her own. And he said, there's nothing I can do. I'm a terrible magician. I told you there's nothing I can do. And then Lear said, what good are magicians? If you can't do anything, if you can't help, what good are you? And he said, well, magicians aren't any good in situations like these. We need a hero. And Lear said, you're right. We need a hero. It's a hero's job to die for a unicorn. And when the bull came running out next, he leaped in front of the bull, and he got his sword out, and the bull trampled him. And he became just stuck in the ground, and he wasn't moving at all anymore. And the bull just kept on going. But the unicorn stopped. the unicorn whose heart had been touched when she was a human. Unicorns don't remember people or care for people, but something had changed in her when she became a human, and she stopped and she looked down at the body of the poor Prince Lear. She looked at the bull, and her horn began to glow again. And the bull was confused, and it started backing up. And the unicorn started advancing forward, just like the bull had done, and pushing the bull to the ocean. And the bull started backing up into the ocean. And those tide was rolling in, and Schmendrick looked out into the ocean, and he saw in the surf, tumbling and twirling over each other, were unicorns coming in by the hundreds, falling all over each other in the surf. And they were all trying to get away from the bull, and the bull was being backed up into the ocean, and the last unicorn was advancing. And the unicorns that were stuck in the surf, they started coming out of the ocean, finally scared of the bull. And the bull was in the ocean, and they could go back out onto the land, and they were no longer scared that the bull was there. And they started jumping up the cliffs, and the cliffs started falling down, and it was like a wave of unicorns, and they just parted around Schmendrick and Molly, and they all disappeared, and the castle came crumbling down, and there was King Haggard standing on top, and they saw him fall with the castle as the unicorns ran over everything out into the world. And then it was just the three of them. Just the two of them, Schmendrick and Molly, and the body of Prince Lear laying on the ground. And Molly and Schmendrick, they were sad that their unicorn was gone and didn't even say goodbye. But then she was there. All of a sudden, she came to say one last goodbye and to say thank you. And she bent down, and she touched her horn first to the forehead of Prince Lear. And he drew a breath, and he opened his eyes, and then she touched her horn to his heart. For the first touch was to bring him back to life, and the second touch she needn't do. The second touch was for love. And then she left. She went the way the other unicorns went, prancing up the hills and out into the world. And Schmendrick, who was a true and proper magician now, after the wonderful blessing of the unicorn, he waved his hat once, and the three of them were gently lifted up upon a breeze, and they rose up above the cliffs, and they landed down in this beautiful meadow where the castle of King Haggard had once been. And there were these three young boys standing there, and they came and greeted, and they said, "Schmendrick, it's us! We're the men-at-arms!" And with the magic of the unicorns, just as they had said, they had become young again. And Prince Lear said to them, "Fetch my horse," for he had every intention of chasing down the unicorn again, so obsessed was he with her. And Schmendrick said, "You cannot go chasing after that unicorn, for you are king now. You are King Lear of all of this land. And this awful curse has been lifted, and you can now go out into the land, and it will prosper, and the people will know you, and it will be wonderful. And you can accompany us to the edge of the boundary if you would, and see your people and see your land, and let them know that they now have a new king, and that he's a nice king, and that he'll do nice things for them." And so quite out of nowhere, the horses came up that Schmendrick somehow knew they were there and called them with his newfound magic. And they all got on their horses and went out into the land where spring was spreading everywhere. Not just one spring, but 50 years worth of spring, spreading all over the land. And finally they came to the edge of the land where they had to leave King Lear behind. And on that last night, in their dreams, the unicorn visited them all one more time. To Schmendrick she came, and they spoke of frivolous things. And she thanked him. And he said, "I would like to come and find you again someday." And she said, "I hope that I can be found, for if I cannot be found It means that I will be wandering forever and can never really get rid of this human itch that I've got. But it was all worth it because I know love. And I never knew love or knew remembering somebody when I was a unicorn. And when Schmendrick woke up, Lear looked at Molly and Schmendrick and said, "What did she say to you?" And Molly said, "I'll never tell." And Schmendrick said, "Nothing much." And Lear said, "She said nothing to me. Do you understand? She didn't say anything at all to me. But she looked at me, and it was all I needed. And now I'm ready to go." And off he went back into his land. And Schmendrick said to Molly, "Will you tell me what she said to you?" And Molly said, "No, I'll never tell." She said, "Well, do you want to go find her together?" And she said, "Yes." And so the two of them went off and started their own journey. But before their journey could begin, they heard a cry of a princess running from another land. "Help! Help! My father is captured! What do I do? Oh, I need a hero! Where? Where? Help me!" And Schmendrick said, "That way, princess. He just went that way. Go and find your hero. I'm sure he's in a good mood to help a princess." But that's a story for another day. The end.